Who's your emergency contact? Who should you notify in the case of death? Welcome to the USP. This is my life story through the journey that I've been in, where I spent the last 2+ decades of my life. These stories aren't just myself, but through the people that I interact with in the events and the chaos that's gone through all the last 2 decades I've spent. Right now, we've left Lompoc. I'm taking you guys on a journey with me throughout the years. Right now, we've left Lompoc and we're now in Victorville. The stories I share, they might not be in order according to days and month, but I was in Victorville from 2004 to 2006 until I got caught up and got a disciplinary transfer. So these events were there at the time that I was in Victorville. Now, I've told you in the last episode, we had a lay down in Victorville. They locked me up. I was in the SHU for almost 6 months before they let me back out. You know, part of the agreement when we decided to lay down that the yard wasn't going to open up until they released everybody back out. And they did. Everybody they locked up, they put them back out in the yard. But while I was in the SHU, I got myself into some other issues with the guards and whatnot. So I stayed a little longer than everybody else. But my whole bid, I've been active. I've stayed active until the day I left. You know, that doesn't necessarily mean that I was in a bunch of stuff, bunch of bullshit all the time or anything like that. It just means that I'm with it, because whenever you let down your guard, it opens you up for a lot more problems. You know, like I told you in other episodes, people aren't looking for a fight. They're looking for an easy mark. So if you open yourself up to say, hey, I don't want no trouble and don't want this, then, you know, it's what it is. So that's why I've always been the way I've been, because the way I've been allowed me to make it home, allowed me to be here today to speak to you and share you the stories that I and others been through. We're in Victorville. On today's episode, I'm telling you about the first body that Victorville got. And it was the Surenos. They killed a guy named, they call him Big Dave. He was a prospect for the NLR. I was in the SHU. The NLR is the Nazi lowriders. I was in the SHU at this time. I got caught up for some wine, and they put me in the SHU. And during the time, they had a new program, a step-down program, where after you're released from the SHU, you come out to a step-down program, which was in 1B, and you do a 6-month program there before you can return to the yard. So the SHU was like the county jail. The step-down program was like the halfway house, and the yard was like our freedom. You know, once you've been in the prison system for so long, you're not worried about being in the streets anymore, because the street is so far off into the distance, or it's not even a possibility for you. So the yard is the free world for us. The SHU is the jail. Now, when I was placed in the step-down program, we bucked, and I ended up back in the SHU. Well, while I was in the SHU, this is when the incident happened. And the incident was relayed to me by Travieso, a Sureno that was in the block that was personally involved in the incident. So the story goes, the white boys was drinking. Big Dave and a few of his homies, they were all in a unit. I think they were in 6th block, and they were drinking. At this time, they stopped selling tobacco products. They stopped selling cigarettes in Victorville. They were still selling in the other penitentiary. But because Victorville was brand new and we fishing there, the warden didn't want to sell no tobacco product to us. So anybody that's ever been addicted to drugs, whatever it be, whether it be heroin, methamphetamine, if you understand that nicotine addiction is one of the vicious addiction that you can have. So what they use, what the staff used, like the lieutenants or whoever, they wanted you to go on a work detail to wax and strip and buffer the hallways and stuff. They reward you with a cigarette. And then, people fish the cigarettes out of leftovers after the CO smoke. They throw it in the ashtray. People go in there with their hook and stuff in the ashtray and fish it out. Like we just smoking after these pigs. When they chew tobacco, they spit it on they throw it on the floor. People take it up and dry it out. Like they've just degraded us to such a level that we're smoking spit. We're smoking after fucking. It's just so frustrating how they break you down in a penitentiary. Because, when you have a certain addiction, it's hard for most people to just walk away from it, And I don't know how you overcome certain addictions. Those are all like personal journeys that everyone's got to take. Well, at this time, what was plentiful there was wine. They still sold you sugar, sold you juice, and you could steal sugar from the commissary and you can make wine. You can turn the wine into moonshine. So wine was prevalent throughout the penitentiary. I dipped and dabbed in that venture, and that's how I ended up in the SHU, because they found 2 batch in my cell and they locked me up. So while I'm in the SHU, Travieso comes back. And this is the story that he told me. They were in 6 block or 5 block. I don't know exactly which block it was, but the white boys was drinking. And the Surenos, they had cigarettes. And Big Dave, he was a little drunk. He came and asked the Travieso, and one of them said, "Hey man, sell us a cigarette." Like I said, cigarettes, tobacco, there was none. So anybody that had it, they treasured it because, they're feeding their addiction. And Trava told them, "Nah, we don't have any cigarettes for sale. We're not selling nothing." So Big Dave went back and did whatever he did with his homie. They continued drinking or whatnot. But later on, he came back again and he asked Travi and them again to sell him a cigarette. And Travi said, "Hey, homie, I told you, we don't have no cigarettes for sale." So at that point in time, Big Dave said, "Man, that's some bitch ass shit." Now understand, in our environment, there's certain words you can't use. Punk, bitch, rat. These are all fighting words. These are all potential death sentence. When you call somebody outside their name, only 2 things you have to expect to happen when you do that. Either that dude's gonna bust you in the mouth, and if he doesn't bust you in the mouth for disrespecting him, for calling him outside his name, then his homeboy is gonna bust him in his mouth for allowing you to call him outside his name. Everything is reputation. Everything is an image. Everybody in there wants that respect, wants to be known. Hey, don't disrespect me. Don't disrespect us. And if you do, this is what's going to happen to you. Because if you allow people to disrespect you, to call you out your name, then you're just a victim waiting to happen, homie. So even though Dave didn't call them directly a bitch by saying, "Oh, that's some bitch ass shit," the homies took it as, "You called us a bitch." So what Trava told me, this happened in the morning time. So he said he went, when the move opened up, because you only have 10-minute moves every hour. So you're locked in the unit. Like I told you, in California, with the Surenos and the white boys, mainly the Black Hand and the AB, they have an alliance. They back each other's play. When one go, the other aid and assist, vice versa. So the Surenos couldn't just move on Big Dave. Even though they were in their feelings, they had to get a green light. So Trava said, when the move opened, they went to go looking for Black Bob. Black Bob was the black hand on the yard. Black Bob and Gato. There was a Perico and Tomas that was there too at the time. They went looking to speak to Black Bob to get the green light to make a move on Big Dave. And Black Bob, rest in peace, he died in 2005 in Victorville. But when they went, for some reason or another, they couldn't get word to Black Bob or to Gato. However, transpired, they didn't get the green light. Or they never got the message to, and then there was no response. So when they came back, they were like, man, fuck the green light. They went back in. And now you have to understand that everybody's affiliated in prison. If I go hit a black dude, I can't just expect to go hit this black dude and keep it contained on a one-on-one level, especially if it's not been agreed that this is going to be a one-on-one. I have to hit every black dude, because if a black person gets up and sees me hitting a black guy, he's going to jump, and so on and so on and so forth. So knowing that, let's just say, for example, if I go hit a Crip, I got to hit all the Crips, because the Crips not going to allow another race, me, whites, Mexican, or anybody else, to hit them and get away with it. So when the Surenos went into the block to hit Big Dave, they had to hit all the white boys in the block, because it's expected that if you see one of your peoples getting chopped up, that you jump in. And if you don't jump in, when the smoke clears, you yourself's gonna get butchered. So Trava was telling me, it was him, Monstro, Lonely. I don't know the exact extent that Yogi was involved in it, but they went and hit the white boys. All the Surenos in that block hit all the white boys, and it was just chaos. I don't know exactly how many times they stabbed Big Dave up. You know, they locked them all up. Big Dave went to the hospital. He was in the hospital for 3 days. The word came back when we was in the shoe through one of the guards when we were out at rec, because I'm in one cage, Travioso was in the next cage, and he's telling me the story about what happened. You know, that Big Dave disrespected him. When he said, oh, that's some bitch ass shit, he took it as him calling him a bitch. And there's just some people, some group, some organization that you can't speak that way to. You can't say certain words to, because there's no secrets in the penitentiary. When somebody does something to you, the whole yard eventually knows it. It's like high school with no girls, you know? But you have a lot of people in there that feed off on the chaos. Even though this issue wasn't a big issue, not this particular issue I'm talking about, but any issue might not be such a big issue, but the dudes that feed into that shit, that relish and that chaos and that drama is gonna keep pushing and pushing until it blows up. So everything, an anthill is gonna eventually be a mountain if you don't take care of it, if you don't nip it in the bud. But you know, to prevent all that is you carry yourself a certain way. And then and people understand, hey, here's my line right here. If you cross it, this is what it is. You know? So they took it as Big Dave calling him a bitch. So they went and hit him. 3 or 4 of them was on him. And the rest of the Surenos that was in the block was hitting the other white boys. So they came to the shoe. While we was out in the cage, the guard came and told us, I was there when the message was delivered. He said, man, he didn't make it. He said he survived the stabbing, but on the 3rd day, one of his wounds caught an infection, gangrene. And the doctors didn't catch it in time. They couldn't stop it before the gangrene hit his bloodstream and went to his heart and killed him. It was tense in the penitentiary at that time because, like I said, in California, the Black Hand and the AB, they have a real close alliance. And in extension, the Surenos and the white boys, the NLR in particular. We was in the program. At this time, we got transferred from the SHU into 1B into the program because I was in there with Boulderhead from the NLR. We were already in the program, in the step-down program in 1B, but we bucked, so they took us back to the SHU, and our intention was to refuse the program and just sit in the SHU. But when this incident happened, and it was time for us to come back to the program, everybody went back to the program because they want to know what's going on in the yard. Like Boulderhead and his homeboys, his other NLR homeboy, they don't want to be stuck in the SHU looking like they ducking wreck or nothing. So they went back to the program so they can be on the yard to see what was up. And they were communicating between the federal prison and the state prison, waiting for the word. You know, at that time, there was a lot of tension on the yard. When I came out, they told me we couldn't, the Surenos couldn't sell nothing to the white boys. They weren't interacting in commerce anymore. They were just waiting to see, what happened. They picked up Perico, they picked up Tomas, they picked up Yogi, Trava, Monstro, Lonely, Mondo. I don't know if they were all involved in that particular incident, but they locked them all up. And yeah, I knew Big Dave personally. He used to walk around with the CMS crew. They go and fix things in the unit and what. We weren't friends or anything. It's hard to become friends with, you have people that you meet and you respect, but, they're Aryan race, they're white supremacists, neo-Nazi. I'm a minority. I'm a colored person or whatever, however you want to classify me. So that puts the barrier up. But at the end of the day, men respect men, and we were able to coexist and get along and even respect each other. But by no means were we like close friends or anything like that. He was just, we were cool. I knew him, and it was a sad situation. Because no matter what aspect, no matter where you're from or whatever, men respect men. And when you have respect for somebody, you don't want to see that shit happen to them. But these are the laws that we live by. He was drunk. He said something he shouldn't have, and it cost him his life. My condolences to his family. It's just, through the course of my 2 decades that I've spent in prison, I've lost a lot of people that I know, and some of them were close friends of mine, through this type of stuff. But we can't escape it, man. We're stuck. We're stuck in a cage. We're a bunch of wild animals in a fucking cage, forced to coexist. And for the most part, we do a pretty good job. But it doesn't take anything. Drop of a dime, you could lose your life. That's just the reality that I've lived in for the last 2 decades. And for all those youngsters, part of the purpose of these programs, these episodes that I'm sharing, I'm not glorifying the violence, homie. I would rather live in peace. I'm just letting you know that this is what it is. You running around out here wild, doing whatever you're doing, you might not be conscious of the reality When you get sent to prison, homie, I don't care if it's 5 years, 20 years, 100 years. It's a potential death sentence. There's no guarantee that you're going to make it back. We got homies that's been there, that went to prison, within the first year got killed or hung themselves or OD'd. You know, sometimes I get emotional about these things because, hell, how else am I not supposed to? It wears you down. I spent 23 years and 8 months in a USP, never seen an FCI. And every penitentiary I've been to, I've been there at the height of its violence. You know, some of it I was a part of, and some of it I was just a bystander. You know, and some of it I was just there on the yard when things happened around me. But like I said, every time in all my videos, man, if I got something wrong, call me on it. If I fabricate something, call me on it. If I exaggerated anything, call me on it. But again, I tell you, I don't need to make up nothing. The reality of my situation is crazy enough for me to even add shit to it. You know, that's the first body in Victorville. And it's endless. And that's what wears you down, wears your soul down. It's endless. It's over and over again, the same chaos, the same drama. And I'm gonna take you through, I was only in Victorville for 2 years. From 2004 to 2006, I got caught up in December of 2005 when I had hurt somebody. But during the 2 years I was there, I don't know how many episodes that's gonna produce, because there's a lot of drama. So, like I said, if you guys enjoy these episodes, you guys want to support what I'm doing here, subscribe, share it with your friends, leave a comment on my channel. You know, my objective here is to speak to the world, to let them know, hey man, we ain't sitting there watching cable TV and playing video games. Thank you for tuning in to Welcome to the USP. See you guys on the next episode.